Hey, what's up everyone? Au5 here. Today we're going to have a look at a neat plugin I recently got called Regroover. Regroover analyzes drum loops and splits the audio into 4 to 6 audio layers based off of spectral and transient content, which then allows you to rearrange and manipulate the layers independently. You can drag clips or WAV files from the browser directly into Regroover. I'll be using loops from my Arise, Elemental, and Freefall sample packs to demonstrate. So let's import this Arise beat B. First thing you want to do is make sure your host tempo is set to the BPM of the loop. So in this case, it's 140. Now I'll just drag the clip right into Regroover, and it will analyze it. So now we have the loop split into 4 layers, and we can listen to each layer individually. Hit the solo button. So this layer doesn't seem to have much content. Layer 2 seems to be the kick and snare body. Layer 3 is the transients and the snare noise. And layer 4 is pretty much just the cymbals. Let's try 5 layers. It's a bit more separated. So let's stick with this. So let's say I want to have my cymbals independent from my kick and snare, but I want the kick and snare to be on the same layer. So what I can do is solo the layers that I want combined. I'm going to hold down Control, hit the solo button. As you can hear, layer 1, 2, 3, and 5 are pretty much just the kick and snare, although there are some cymbals that are bleeding over in layer 1. So here's how we could fix that. If we go up here where it shows the grid, we can choose our grid size. Now what we can do is click this eraser icon right next to split, and we can select the pieces of audio that we want to combine with other layers. So here's how we'll do that. So layer 5 is just the kick body. Layer 3 is the transients and the snare noise. Layer 2 is the mid-range stuff. And layer 1, we have a little bit of the snare treble that we want to preserve. So let's put all of the kick and snare content into layer 5, but keep layer 4 isolated. We can double-click anywhere and highlight the sections that we want to merge with another layer. So it's pretty much all layer 3, all of layer 2, and just the snares on layer 1. So I'm just double-clicking these individual eighth note cells here. Now I can lock all of the layers except the layer that I want to merge what I have selected into and hit split. So now layer 5 should have the kick and the snare. Pretty decent isolation, I'd say. So this stuff up here, I can combine with the cymbals layer. So I'm going to unlock it and select the entire thing. And then I'm going to make sure that everything else is locked except the cymbals layer. So now everything that's selected is going to be merged with layer 4. So I'm going to hit split again. Cool. So with Regroover, you can also rearrange what is played, hence the name Regroover. So I can constrain my loop selector to only this section of the cymbals. or I can just have it playing just a kick. I can also add effects that are built in to individual layers. So we have a gate. Let me extend this. A 3-band EQ. Compressor. Bypass these. Compressor. And a saturator that also has a filter, wet dry, and transient control. This is pretty cool. Regroover also lets you select individual portions of layers to put into an expansion kit so you can play them as one-shot samples. I'm going to deselect the eraser icon, and now what I select, I'm able to highlight. If I move my mouse to the lower half of the waveform, you can see that my cursor changes. I'm able to drag what I have selected into the expansion kit. Now I have my kick. Isolate this snare. And a closed and open hi-hat. If I go into the editor, I can further manipulate these, trimming the waveform, as well as volume enveloping and effects. So now these are playable with MIDI. So that's pretty cool. But I think Regroover gets more interesting when we start using individual outputs to our DAW tracks. So currently I only have 2 layers, but I can still further split layers that I already combined. So for instance, this snare and kick layer, I can unlock, use the eraser tool. I'm going to select only my snares. I can change my grid size to make this faster. I could also hold Shift to deselect. So now that I have these selected, I want to split this into other layers. I'm going to hit the lock button and then just unlock the ones that I want to split into. I'm going to hit split. And now it's split the snare into 3 layers. The ultrasonic layer, which we can barely hear. A transient layer. And we we have our kicks and our cymbals isolated. So I'm just going to combine this with our, let's see. I'm going to combine this with our noise layer. Lock those off. I'm going to deselect these. And hit split. Oops, I messed this up. I forgot to unlock layer 2. So it force split it into locked layers. Unfortunately, Regroover doesn't have an undo function. And so far, that's really my only critique of the plugin. So I'm going to select all this stuff and combine them into appropriate layers again. All right, so now I have 4 layers. I have the kick, the snare body, the snare tail, and the cymbals. So this is where it gets interesting. Using Regroover's outputs, I can assign different outputs that correspond to different tracks in my DAW. So for the snare body, let's do output 1. For the snare tail, let's do output 2. For the cymbals, let's do output 3. And for the kick, let's do output 4. So now what you want to do is create audio tracks and set their inputs to Regroover. And so for output 2, underneath where it says Regroover, I can choose the actual channel within the plugin. So now if I solo them, we have them separated independently as tracks in our DAW. So now we can do cool stuff like put individual effects on them. So by default, the Regroover plugin is output 1. So this is our snare. So let's use something like, I don't know, a frequency shifter to retune just the body of the snare but preserve everything else. We can EQ our kick. And our cymbals. Let's put a gate on our snare tail. But let's use the sidechain input from our snare body track. Got the audio input from channel 1. We could further EQ it. Or put some reverb on it. And for our cymbals, let's put a really short ping pong delay on that and get kind of like a resonator effect. So as you can see, this is stuff you can't really do affecting a single audio loop. That's what makes Regroover so powerful. All right, so let's try another drum loop. Let's try this house beat loop 1 from my elemental pack. So it's in 128, so I'm going to set my host to 128 and just drag it in. Whenever you're analyzing a new loop, it's going to initialize your effects. So let's see what we got. Below that. Kick transients and our snare tail. Little cymbals. Oh, the outputs don't get initialized. That's good to know. All right, our kick body. And our cymbals and a little bit of snare noise. Let's consolidate these into a kick, snare, and cymbals. So again, I'm going to highlight just my kick transients on this track. Lock off the other layers that are not my kick, and hit split. Cool. So, as you can see, the expansion kit did not get initialized. So these samples are still in there from the Arise beat, with the effects that I had on them initially still on them. So I can add to this expansion kit from new samples that I imported from a different loop. And I can also put effects on them individually. And with these, using the track that I'm already on, I can create a drum beat with just MIDI. I'm going to mute all of these other layers first, so it doesn't play. And I can also change the tempo of that since they're in MIDI now. Very cool. So I've covered the basics of how Regroover works. Now I just want to add more auxiliary percussion to this drum beat that I have established using these other loops down here. So this future beat loop from my elemental pack is in 175. I'm going to set it to 175. Import. I'm going to mute my MIDI track. Let's see what we got. Let's try 6 layers and high activity. like this snare here. I'm gonna select a little bit more because there's that pre-shift there that I want to keep. Going to drag that into my expansion kit. And let's see what's in this drum and bass loop. So this loop is from Shock Diamond, which is 174. Let's see what we got. I like that little ghost snare there. Let me turn the activity down. I like that little ride there as well. Now let's trim these up. All right, and let's continue this beat. So I think 120 is a good tempo. Can't forget to mute my other layers. Well, I can also reverse these samples as well. Oh, I forgot to use these. See what else we can throw in here. All right, and that's pretty much everything, at least that I've discovered so far. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to check out the Accusonus website to try out Regroover for yourself or some of their other plugins. Really cool stuff. As always, stay creative, stay inspired. Peace.